We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 51, texts from 51 to 53. I'll read first 51. Nirjitya dikchakramadbhuta vigraho varasanasta samaraja vandita griheshu maitunya sukheshu yoshitam kridamriga purusha ishanyate. Having conquered the entire circle of directions and having thus free of conflict, a man sits on a splendid throne, receiving praise from leaders who are once his equals. But when he enters the women's chambers, where sex pleasure is found, he is led about like a pet animal, O Lord. 52. Karoti karmani tapahsu nishtito nivritta bhogastat apekshayadadat punascha bhuyasam aham swarat raditi pravriddha tarshona sukhaya kalpate. A king who desires even greater power than he already has strictly performs his duties, carefully practicing austerity and foregoing sense enjoyment. But he whose urges are rampant, thinking, I am independent and supreme, cannot attain happiness. And text 53, please repeat. Bhavapavargo brahmato yadha bhavech. Bhavapavargo brahmato yadha bhavech. Bhavapavargo brahmato yadha bhavech. Janasya tarhyachuta tat samagama. Janasya tarhyachuta sat samagama. Satsangamo yarhita daiva satgato. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati. Bhavapavargo brahmato yada bhavech. Janasya tarhyachuta satsamagama. Satsangamo yarhita daivat sadgato. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati.
Bhavapavargo brahmato yadha bhavech.
Bhavapavargo brahmato yadha bhavech.
Janasya tarhyachuta satsamagama. Satsangamo jarita daiva satgato. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati.
Satsangamo yarita deva satgato. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati. Bhavapavargo brahmato yada bhavech.
Bhavapavargo brahmato yada bhavech.
Janasya tarhyachuta satsamagama. Janasya tarhyachuta satsamagama. Satsangamo yarita deva satgato. Satsangamo yarita deva satgato. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati. Paravareshe tvayi jayate mati.
Ladies.
Bhavapavargo brahmato yadha bhavech.
Bhavavargo Brahmato Yada Bhavet Janasya Chuta Satsamagama Satsangamo Yarhita Daya Satgato Paravareshe Tvayayate Mati Bhavavargo Brahmato Yada Bhavet Janasya Chuta Satsamagama Satsangamo Yarhita Daya Satgato Paravareshe Tvayayate Mati Bhava of material existence, Apavarga, the cessation, Brahmata, one who has been wandering, Yada, when, Bhavet, occurs, Janasya, for a person, Tarhi, at that time, Achyuta, O infallible Lord, Sat, of saintly devotees, Samagama, the association, Satsangama, saintly association, Yarhi, when, Tada, then, Eva, only, Sat, of the saintly, Gato, who is the goal, Para, of superior, the cause of material creation, Avara, and inferior, their products. Ishe, for the Supreme Lord, Tvai, yourself, Jayate, is born, Mati, devotion. Translation: when the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, or Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees. And when he associates with them, there awakens in him devotion unto you, who are the goal of the devotees, and the Lord of all causes and their effects. Purport. Acharyas Jiva Goswami and Vishwanatha Chakravarti agree on the following point. Although it is stated here that when material life ceases, one attains the association of devotees. In fact, it is the association of the Lord's devotees that enables one to transcend material existence. Srila Jiva Goswami explains this apparent inversion of sequence by quoting the Kavya Prakasha 10.153 as follows: Karya karanayoscha purva apraya viprayayo vyegeya tishoka yokti syatsa. A statement in which the logical order of a cause and its effect is reversed should be understood as ati shayokti, emphasis by extreme assertion. Srila Jiva Goswami cites the following commentary on this statement: Karanasya shighra karitam vaktum karasya purvam ukta. To express the swift action of a cause, one may assert the result before the cause. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that the merciful association of the Lord's devotees makes possible our determination to become Krishna conscious. And the Acharya agrees with Srila Jiva Goswami that this verse is an instance of Ati Shayokti. What was Ati Shayokti? Of the logic of cause and effect. To emphasize the swift happening of one thing causing another. In poetry, if you want to emphasize it, you state the effect first, and you say, because of this, the other, which seems very logical. But in poetry, this is a device to actually emphasize the point. So again, the verse, Bhavapa vargo brahmato yadha bhave janasya tarhya chutta satsamagama sat sangamo yarhita daiva sadgatau paravareshe tvai jayate mati. When the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees, and when he associates with them, there awakens in him devotion unto you, who are the goal of the devotees and the Lord of all causes and their effects. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamahayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sadhana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Dvalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Pacham Pandam Gaiti Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. So King Muchukunda continues answering Lord Krishna's question about what do you want from me to bestow you as a benediction or to fulfill your desire. So first Muchukunda expresses his position in illusion that he actually doesn't know what is beneficial, and just now in 2 verses he will, I think, express also his desire, what he actually wants from the Lord, but now he is continuing to describe. And he first said in verse 50, well, kings like me who have conquered all directions and are sitting on great thrones, and others who before were their equals, or even higher, now they've been conquered, they offer respects in the great assembly hall. So they have this big ego, I'm the great, I'm in the center, I'm being worshipped, everyone respects me. But when they enter in the queen's chambers, they become Krida Mriga, a pet animal, and they are led like that pet animal, very humble, not anymore the great heroes. So he's talking about himself here in a humility and saying, look, what a fool I am. Continuing his trait in his humble submission to Lord Krishna. And then he says, those who are more intelligent, they perform austerities, do their duties very diligently, perform austerities, and they want greater power than what they have. Still, that's not the wise way. Only if you attain devotion to your lotus feet, that is the real thing. No matter your position. So how is that done? Through satsanga. That's what he says. So this verse, therefore, is very famous. From all the verses he is saying here, this verse is quoted in many other places. because it emphasizes the importance of saintly association. And as we learn from the purport, he makes this interesting statement that when one's material life is finished, then one can associate with saintly persons. And then which raises the question, well, what does it mean? Then does it mean that we don't really associate with devotees while we are conditioned with saintly person, or we cannot, or we don't have access to that association? So the acharyas explain, well, in his excitement, that's how you state. You make a reverse order in the logic and you say, well, actually, it is the opposite. In fact, first you have association and then very quickly you become liberated. So this expression in Sanskrit, yada tada, means when, then, or if, then, is very common in poetry. And like, for example, one verse Prabhupada quotes often about the feeling of Yamunacharya when he remembers his activities. Yamunacharya was also a king, although born as Brahmana. By his intelligence, he won half of a kingdom, and then he became a king and enjoyed like a king. So he also had queens, etc. So he was familiar with all kinds of comforts and enjoyments. But then he became devotee by the mercy of devotees of his, because he was a Brahmana and he was a disciple in the disciplic succession. Later Yamunacharya, that was Yamunacharya, and then later Ramanujacharya appeared, but in Sri Sampradaya. So his guru thought, well, my disciple is becoming really fallen in this position as a king, so he made an arrangement, and one of his other disciples went and saved him. So he came back to his senses and became very strict and devoted. But then he sometimes remembered, oh, I enjoyed. And this enjoyment, when he remembered it, he said, then something happens with me. Anyone remembers what he expressed? When I remember...
Lips will curl in this state.
Yes, his lips curl. And then he spits on the thought of sensual enjoyment. It's a similar expression, yada tada. Oh, there's one very nice verse in Vrindavan Mahimamrita by Prabodhananda Saraswati. And then he also says, many yada, 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 yada. If I have at any time performed any pious activity, if at any time I served a sadhu or associated with a sadhu, then, I beg for Vrindavan to be merciful and accept me. Give the mercy to this fallen soul. So this is the expression when, then, and this is a logical and cause-effect expression, obviously. And in Kavya, we learn that this is called, when it's reversed, ati means something which is exaggerated. Ati shayukti. Ati shayukti. That's what it is. So ati means too much. Like Lord Chaitanya was once glorified. And then it was actually the prayer by Rupa Goswami, which is now in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, quoted a few times, so right in the beginning, like this is the, he used that verse as an invocation, and his, at that time it was one conceived drama, but then he divided it in two, becoming Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava. So he already started writing in Jagannath Puri while he was with Lord Chaitanya. So they found, Lord Chaitanya once went there and found the verse, and then he was really happy. He showed it to the devotees, and that verse was spoken by Purnamasi. It's in the beginning of the Vidagdha Madhava, and Purnamasi is telling one of the gopis about the glory of the name of Krishna. That these syllables, Krishna, are so attractive, so sweet, that I wish to have thousands of, millions of ears and tongues. So devotees and Chaitanya show it, and Swarup Damodar and all the others, they were, oh, this is such a great poem. We never heard such a glorification of the holy name. So they started discussing, oh, okay, can you tell us more about this, your drama and how it will unfold? Rupa Goswami was very humble. He didn't want to share, but can you say what is your invocation? How you address especially, because in the invocation you beg for the mercy of your Ishtadeva. So they say, can you cite your Ishtadeva appeal or request for mercy? And then he became even more shy. His head went down, and Lord Chaitanya, why? Please go on, just chant it, recite this verse, because he already have written something, so that must have been written, the invocation prayers. And he didn't want. And then Lord Chaitanya, you have to tell us. So Rupa Goswami recited this wonderful verse. And then that verse actually is a glorification of Lord Chaitanya. He says, I pray for all of you listeners or readers of this book, that the son of Sachi stays in the core of your heart, in the cave of the heart, in the core of your heart, there, appears always, is always present there. And he appeared as the most merciful to give that which was not given never or for a long time, Chiram. Lord Chaitanya, hearing this, and it was directly about himself, glorification, and he said, and all the devotees were like, this is wonderful, wonderful poetry, but Lord Chaitanya, this is ati-stuti, exaggerated poetry. don't say it anymore. Another instance of ati is, there is, you remember something? Atyahara also. Ahara means eating, so or collecting. Atyahara means overeating, over-collecting. Too much. Once there was during Lord Chaitanya, poet in Odisha, and he wrote a commentary to Bhagavatam, but he seemed to be quite proud, and he even wrote a few more chapters to the Bhagavatam itself. He kind of had some appendices to Bhagavatam. And then he really wanted to present it to Mahaprabhu, but he wasn't allowed. So Swarup Damodar always screened. Anyone wanted to read something to Mahaprabhu, he first checked it. And we know also about this poet from Bengal who was a relative or a friend of Bhagavan Acharya. And then he came and, I have this poetry for Lord Chaitanya and for Jagannath. Can I read it? And then he read it to Bhagavan Acharya, other devotees, and they were like, oh, this is great. But first, Swarup Damodar must hear it. So then, okay, let's hear the Mangala Charana. Same thing. So he started with, Lord Jagannath is the wooden form of the Supreme, and his soul is Mahaprabhu. And then everyone, oh, great. And Swarup Damodar became very angry. How can you write this? There is a difference between the body of the Lord and his soul. Don't you understand tattva? You will not allow you to read. But he was very humble. Oh, I'm sorry. And then he explained, no, you cannot make such a statements. And he explained that the Lord and his soul, there's no difference like that. And he said one famous statement, if you want to understand, you have to study Bhagavatam from a devotee, in association of devotees, something which Lord Chaitanya later on also told to many others, including Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. He told him, go and study Srimad Bhagavatam under the expert devotee. And he did it, and when he came back, after his parents passed away, he was so expert, he could recite any verse from Bhagavatam in 4 meters, 4 different types of melodies. Devotees were very happy to hear him, and he went to Vrindavana with the other Goswamis, and that was his service, to recite Bhagavatam and chant, the only thing he did. And he never found faults with anyone, even if they had faults. He just considered them devotees. Okay, so there was this poet from Odisha, and he was insisting, I have written these commentaries. And then Lord Chaitanya said, I don't want to hear. And he said, because when he presented, he said, why? He said, because I'm not qualified actually. He's Ativadi. He's too learned for me. Ativadi is too much learned. And since then, actually, one of the upper sampradayas identified by Bhaktivinoda Thakur later is Ativadi Sampradaya. We're too great. We're too learned. So we have to be careful to not think that we became Ativadi, too much learned. Okay, so let's come back to the verse and read what literally Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says about that. When will bhakti, which destroys all suffering and bestows all bliss, appear? This is stated in this verse. When the wandering jiva destroys his bondage of material existence, then he will get association of merciful devotees, satsangava. So, yeah, this is a similar what Chaitanya said, Brahmanda, the same word, Brahmato, wandering, Brahmanda, Brahmite. When in the Brahmanda, Brahmite means wandering, the soul wanders, and then when Bhagyavan, when it's lucky, there's no reason actually. We can't trace the reason. If you are just lucky, what will happen? In your wandering, you will meet a devotee, and by mercy of the devotee, you will get the seed of bhakti. So that is stated in this verse. When that happens, then certainly attachment to you will take place. When that association occurs and nothing else, then attachment to you will take place. In this verse, the words when and then is used with a broad conception of time. In the concept of more accurate time, however, association of devotees and destruction of material existence are related as cause and effect, and should be mentioned in that way, using yarhi and tarhi. That is, when there is association of devotees, then there is destruction of bondage. However, because the effect happens so quickly, the effect is mentioned before the cause to emphasize the quickness. This is an example of four types of atiyasya ukti, or extreme statement. Vaishnava Toshani explains the word sat gato, unto you the shelter of the devotees. Without my mercy, association does not take place. Therefore, my mercy should be the first cause. Now here another factor comes. Okay, so we need the mercy of devotees to become free. And when we are free, then we actually associate, and that bhakti is born. So then he says, but to have association of devotees, we need the mercy of the Lord. And so he quotes, but when the Lord will give his mercy? Any guesses? Why he chooses to give mercy to someone and not to all? If a devotee is pleased, then Krishna. Yeah, but how a wandering jiva will please a devotee without associating? So here the point is, to get that association, we need the mercy of Krishna. You know, that's a whole discussion. It's in another place by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and other acharyas. What is causing bhakti? Because in many places in Bhagavatam also, and Krishna makes the statement also in 11th canto about that bhakti, there is no cause. So, but how then it happens if there is no cause? When there is devotional association, then attachment to you, whose shelter is the devotee, who is dependent on the devotee, gives mercy to the devotee, arises. As you yourself say, I am dependent on the devotee. Whatever you do is also by the desire of the devotee, it is not independent. Your mercy is after the mercy of the devotee. You are dependent on the devotee and not dependent on the non-devotee. Okay, it's a complicated, it seems, but basically it says, well, Krishna is not independent when giving his mercy. it's not a random choice, like Krishna is looking all the jivas, okay, I will throw some mercy to some and to others not. Krishna is not independent, he gives the mercy following the devotees. In other words, the devotees are actually the via media through which Krishna's mercy is distributed. And do they make any distinction when distributing Krishna's mercy? Makes a distinction, yes, in choosing the association, but in general in giving mercy, because if you speak about the verse from 11th canto that Madhyamadikari avoids the association of the envious, that's also showing mercy. That's the commentary. This is a great mercy also shown by avoiding association. But in the commentaries they explain that he avoids intimate association but is praying for these souls who are envious. In other words, still, if you get the attention of a devotee who prays for you, even because of your enviousness, then definitely you get the attention of Krishna. That's the point here. So any kind of contact with a devotee will give you a great benefit. Therefore, in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says, sadhu sangha, lava matra. Even a particle of a moment of association of sadhu, well, the benefit is immense. So devotees, they don't make actually discrimination. They don't. I mean, they choose their association and how they distribute the mercy, but they are merciful to everyone, all the jivas, all the fallen souls, also the inimical ones. So therefore, everyone has a chance to get Krishna's mercy through the devotees. So, therefore your mercy does not arise first. Such mercy of the devotees is shown in the statement, and here's a quote, Swayam Samutirya, the great devotees who take shelter of your lotus feet cross over the ocean of material existence and live here through the line of Guru succession, the boat of your lotus feet, because they are most affectionate to all living entities. So, and that was Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then there are the commentaries of Jiva Goswami, similar in Sanatana Goswami, who, like usually, who says it can mean this, and like that. So he's also saying that this could be a Atya Shokti, and also it can mean that, to get the possibility of association of devotees, you need to be, like Krishna says, also you need to be freed at least to some extent from your burden of karma, which happens again through pious and hundreds of millions of lives of pious activities and some Agyata Sukriti. That's actually the way Acharyas explain how this miracle happens. Bhakti is not caused by anything but association of devotees. How you get that association? Well, by chance, but it's not just a chance. You need to have accumulated some great pious activities, but not just mundane piety. Bhakti will not express, and Prabhupada quotes him in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a special type of piety called, I forgot the technical term, but it's a devotional piety. In other words, you unconsciously perform some devotional activity and got devotional credit. Like you helped a devotee, you gave donation, you were looked by a devotee. That's also unnoticed. You took the dust without knowing you, or prasad or something. You heard the holy name, something like that. So that was just a seed, and then it fructified in due course of time. Any questions so far? Comments? Yes.
You spoke about Ati.
Yeah.
Ati Stuti and Ati Ahara. So when we sing Nikunya Yuna over Ratikelu Sitya Yayala,
Yeah.
is that an Ati Valabhasha is also too dear to the Lord?
It doesn't mean only exaggerated or it just means very much. So he's very, very dear. And not too dear, like it too much dear, so nobody likes it. Yeah.
Too dear to Krishna.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to continue. This verse is quoted by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in a very long purport to one verse spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his mother. This is from Chaitanya Bhagavat. So we know that at one point he gave her instructions like Kapila Dev gave instructions to Devahuti, and then he spoke for a long time. This is almost of the chapter, many verses, and he spoke about the path of the soul, similar to what Kapila Dev spoke, and kind of towards the end he says, therefore my mother, you have to give a bad association and always chant Hare Krishna in the association of devotees. And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quotes verse after verse about association of devotees, the greatness of it and the need for it. So he quotes also that verse. He quotes the verse we spoke on Sunday about from the Sadham Prasanga. No, maybe, yeah. So that's from the third canto and many verses. So I have them here, but we will not have time. I want to have some more discussion now. Just wanted to make some points about this association that we spoke. It's actually following the example, following the instructions. It's not a physical thing, but it's also we spoke about the word not a proximity. It's a proximity of heart. But to get that, also you need to have sangha, which is also physical. So it's very important to be in the physical association of devotees. Otherwise, you associate with someone else, and then you'll get other influence and other association. So, as we know, do we have actually a recommendation in, for example, by the acharyas specifically as a item or rule of bhakti or rule of the process that we have to associate with devotees? You in your class quoted Upadeshamrita, right? Saying that in the positive and the negative there is one thing. In the 6 items we should avoid so that bhakti is not destroyed, starting from atyahara and prajalpa, etc., from overeating, talking, idle talks or gossip, whatever, and coming to asat sangha or bad association. And then in the positive steps are all positive in that sense that first we have enthusiasm and patience or conviction, etc., following the prescribed methods, practices of bhakti, and then sangha tyaga. Here sangha is referring to asat sangha. Many times in Shastra actually when sangha is mentioned, it is implied that this is mundane association. So sangha tyaga, then what is the next? Satovritti. So do we have we only have the negative side, just give up bad association, but do we have the recommendation for positive association? But this is the way how we do it.
That you have to be physical to give present.
Okay. Okay.
Interaction.
Yeah, I was specifically saying if it's directly stated, you have to associate with devotees. But actually, sato vritte is Prabhupada says following in the footstep of sadhu. So this vritti is very interesting word, and Prabhupada says following in the footsteps. And I mentioned that Sangha means association, but it means also devotion to, attachment to. So the same is with vritti. Vritti means also a devotion to or attachment to sadhus. So in that sense, it also is very similar to Sangha. We can accept it as a Sangha, also following, but also vritti means lifestyle and behavior and mood in general. And therefore Bhaktivinoda Thakur says actually Sato vritte means sadhachara, means living like a sadhu, like those great devotee sadhus. So you follow also in that sense, you follow them. So, and then he have a whole list about that, dividing in different categories devotees. He often does that. He doesn't give one practical advice for everyone. He says, depending on your situation, who you are, and he usually divides devotees in those who renounce and householders, and the different categories of householders. For example, in Raghunath Das Goswami Mana Shiksha, there is this wonderful verse where he says that once you, or there in 2-3 verses, he speaks about that, the great obstacles of advancement, of coming to the real nectar of the service of Radha and Krishna. He says that once the devotee conquers the 6 enemies, anyone remembers who are the 6? Shat Ari. What are the 6 enemies? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Matsarya, Mada. So yeah, last great, and he says devotee, when a devotee conquers, and he calls them robbers in different places, and that's kind of a very nice comparison, because they rob you from your devotional achievements, lust and anger and envy and greed, like that. But then at one point the devotees conquers them, and so these robbers, they are killed, they lie down. So in the book actually by Urmila Mataji, who is coming tomorrow, she had really made these really nice illustrations, and then there was a devotee who, and around him they are killed. These different types of enemies, they're killed. So devotee thinks, wow, I'm free. I don't have any more enemies. But that's wrong, because there are 2 more who really, he says, they are so, what was the word he used? Insidious or something like that, because you don't recognize them easily. What are these? This kapata and pratishta. The propensity to cheat and to the desire for fame and respect and position, like that. So, and then he compares them, one to a donkey's urine, and he said, I'm so unfortunate, I want to take shower with the donkey's urine of the kapata, of the cheating, instead of the merciful shower of the nectar of service of Radha and Krishna. So I prefer that burning urine of the donkey. So there is illustration of that. There is a donkey, and then there is a shower coming, and devotee is sitting under the shower. And then another comparison is that the pratishta, I believe pratishta was compared with a shvapacha ramani. Who remembers what is a shvapacha? What is pacha? Pacha means cooking. So when you say paka, something is cooked actually. Is a cooked devotee. It means well done. But pacha means cook, and shva is a dog. Shvapacha means a dog cooker, literally, or dog eater. And so Ramani, in that sense, is a woman who is a society girl, a prostitute. Prostitute who is a dog cooker. And then and then she is the illicit lover of the cheater, the kapata. And they together have a really good team, and they destroy your devotional life. You will not be able to move any inch, if you are not careful. And so they'll work as a team, the cheating mentality. And it's kapate or kutinati can mean many things also, just like pratishta, but it's this cheating. And so what does it mean, cheating? That I tell lies? That also, but it means so many things. It's actually hypocrisy. And wow, okay, do I am hypocritical? Maybe sometimes I can notice I'm not very straightforward. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his purport, he analyzes it in such a details. What actually means hypocrisy for a devotee? For this type of householders who are following Varnashram, for householders who don't follow Varnashram, and for renunciates, and a whole list. And then you read, and then when I read them, I say, well, actually I have, these traits for all of them, for renunciate, for householder, for everyone. And it's so helpful. So, just to finish that Raghunath Das Goswami says, actually I cannot deal with these two enemies because they're too strong. I cannot do anything, and unless I have the help of a Senapati, of a general in the army of Lord Chaitanya. If I take shelter in the generals, in the leaders of Lord Chaitanya's army, in other words, again, the sadhus, the great devotees, only they can pull me and help me by their association. I can overcome this. So my point was that Bhaktivinoda Thakur have a long list about what sadhu vritti means. That what it means to have a lifestyle of devotee, or how to follow, and he has a manual for grihastas, manual for renunciants, manual for all devotees, 33 items. You should do this, you should avoid this. But we don't have time to look at this, maybe another time. I just remember one instance where Prabhupada gave, of course we know what Prabhupada expected as a general, as our lifestyle, but this is something which I think is very important, that Prabhupada gave in 66, November 25th, the famous handwritten notice. I'm sure Vishnu Machpuru remembers that because it's in the Vanipedia. That's where I accessed it because I have it as a picture. So I want to copy it in my phone, so immediately Vanipedia noticed from Prabhupada, handwritten. So Prabhupada. There is some history, Prabhu, if you remember what was the history of Prabhupada writing this notice. It's also interesting, but he personally wrote it and posted it on the wall in New York, in the first temple. So notice, and this is the simple lifestyle Prabhupada gave for us. Well, that's sadhuvritti. All initiated devotees must attend morning and evening classes. So this is something we discussed about, how to seek association, and Prabhupada is very emphatic, says you attend morning, evening classes. Must not be addicted to any kind of intoxicants, including coffee, tea, and cigarettes. They are forbidden to have illicit sex connections, must be strictly vegetarian, shouldn't mix extensively with non-devotees, should not eat foodstuffs cooked by non-devotees, should not waste time in idle talks, nor engage himself in frivolous sports, and should always chant the Lord's holy name, and handwritten Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Acharya, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, 22nd Avenue, New York, dated November 25th, 1966. Okay. Thank you. Any comments or anything you're taking away from what we spoke so far?
Maybe just the context that we were discussing yesterday and the day before, that we hear a lot about that proximity is not so important. It's a heart connection. That's one. And two, you always have to seek for the highest association. And there is a danger in those two statements, although they are very true, is that we think proximity is not important, so I can stay home and listen to the most advanced devotees that give classes all over the world. And in this way I follow these two guidelines. And that means in community building, the temple rooms are empty because the devotees who give class in the temple room, they are just regulars, you know, and not always the greatest point. So better to stay home, sit behind your laptop and listen to most advanced devotees, because proximity is also not important. That was actually the basis of our discussion, that what should we do, you know? Should we go to the temple and listen to the devotees, or should we stay home and listen to maybe more experienced or more advanced devotees? So maybe you could elaborate more.
Yeah, I can share what I told you. My first reaction was, why not both? Why one is at the expense of other? But then you might say, well, there is no time, whatever. And then your point of how can you build a community unless there is an actual mixing of devotees in hearing and chanting? Because you could say, well, we meet during prasad and it's all, but usually we don't quote Bhagavatam usually, or don't have a discussion, which one of the verses quoted by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is really wonderful. It's from, I think, 4th canto. It says Sambhashan Samprashna. The real association of devotees, when there is Sambhashan, it means discourse, a discussion. And Samprashna means question, and Prabhupada translates it in the verse, when there is question and answers between devotees on the topic of Krishna, of Shastra. So Prabhupada institutionalized it, you know, all other Sangha is also there if it's centered around Krishna. But somehow he was very emphatic on that, and he again and again repeated about this morning program and attending classes, just like in this notice. So for him it was important. It didn't really matter so much who is actually reading or speaking, as long as it followed the topic, you know, the topic and the verses and like that. It's about Bhagavatam. So of course there should be a good standard of well-prepared classes, and that whatever is spoken is connected with the verse and like that, and it's connected with Shastra, not anything. My point when you mentioned that was, community building is definitely very important. That's what Prabhupada expected, that devotees build sanghas that keeps them strong, etc. But I was more concerned about actually Prabhupada's pleasure. That's why we do it. That's the real sadhu sangha. It's Prabhupada's sadhu sangha. So he's here and he expects us to be in some way, you know, connected, and of course Radha and Gopinath are here. So we can be, it's not just intellectual, we have to get intellectual satisfaction of hearing a great class with many points or whatever we expect from a good class, and then we walk out happy or, you know, satisfied. Okay, it was a great class, but as you said, well, no matter what the class is, you always feel purified, right? And I think the reason is because Prabhupada is happy. That's the only reason, and we will get purified and we'll get bhakti. That's what is spoken here, Jayate Mati. In our mind, in our heart, Krishna will appear because of the pleasure of a pure devotee. So we have to get some balance in that, I think. That's my opinion. Anyone else want to say something on that, or anything else?
I thought that Krishna clearly said that the devotee who is most dear to me is a devotee that on my behalf takes risk and preaches. So also Srila Prabhupada stressed that we have to spread the movement, and that means taking association. And the comparison is made also that when you want to be a yogi, you can go to the Himalaya and sit in a cave. That's a good thing, but that's for your personal benefit. For the benefit of Lord Chaitanya's mission, the benefit of Srila Prabhupada, pleasing Srila Prabhupada, is that we should associate. Because, as you just said, that also studying or lecture is theoretical, But associating with the devotees is practical, and that invokes the dynamic exchange of love and compassion. Whereas when I study, I may get some knowledge, but you can build up knowledge limitlessly. That's not the point. The point is to develop bhakti, and that we do through association, through practically caring for each other, respecting each other. You don't have to be an academic, although books are the basic, definitely. But more important is that we share the message that we do by giving loving association.
Yeah, you said it so nicely, by giving loving association. So that's the idea of preaching. We share the association. We don't take it, we give it, but we have to be careful, because if we become too close or too intimate, and then the person to whom we try to influence, they are very strong, and then if we are weaker, then we'll get the association. But yeah, that's also explained in Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his commentary to Asat Sangha, what means actually to avoid bad association. And he says also it's not about physical proximity, it's about the heart exchange. And he gives a whole details about what practically means in life. But yeah, devotees usually, they can get, contact with anyone, and they go for that. They risk actually, even if they know, well, that may be contaminated, and we know they go to places like very horrible places to preach, which is very contaminated. But they do it, and they're protected.
And like a Vaishnava is considered, or one definition of a Vaishnava is that he finds gold in the mud. So a Vaishnava, whoever he associates with, he can see, and like Christ said, don't hate the sin, we hate the sin, but not the sinner. So he can give association, take association in all circumstances. He's above, the ignorance, because it's,
Yeah, experienced preacher actually knows, where to put the most attention and give most association, and but is kind and merciful to everyone. So especially, book distributors, they are very experienced. They can notice quickly, if it's worth spending some time with someone and talking. Sometimes, in experience, you can talk 2 hours with a hard, born Christian, born again Christian. He's convincing, no, you have to, and then it's a waste of. But still, you can engage, and like Vaisheshika once he took, by someone, he took his lighter. He was like, I don't have anything to give you, and I said, you don't have anything? You take that book and just give something. I don't have any money, no, anything. I have a lighter. I said, you can give him the lighter. So he got the lighter, and he used it for a long time in his puja. That's mercy of a devotee. And he remembered that person while worshipping Krishna, and definitely Krishna is okay. So that poor soul, I will take care. Anything else? Yes, Vidachatana.
Yeah, same point. I think we all know there is a special power in, like when you chant alone or in Sankirtan, together chanting, there is an extra power. And then combined with the fact that it's one of the prime instructions of Srila Prabhupada, as you mentioned. So these different elements together, when you sit together with devotees in the class, is more powerful. The Sangha, the being together is more powerful, and then under the instruction of Srila Prabhupada, and then we do the right thing for making spiritual advancement.
Yes. Thank you, Guru. Another thing I just thought when, or not just now, but I remember what I thought when you said, because here 2 days of the week we hear directly Srila Prabhupada. So especially when he's talking and giving a class. And then, as you said, well, if many devotees, they think, well, we'll hear the highest. But you don't see even then the full community present when Prabhupada is speaking. So that's also some indication that cannot be an excuse, because then, oh, Prabhupada is speaking us, definitely I should go, right?
Yes.
Okay. Something else?
And one thing Ambarish Maharaj, in his Savaimana Krishna Padavini verse, he says, Tad bridge gatras pasha anga sangamam.
Oh, physical touch.
He says also that, you know, I use my sense of touch,
Yeah.
touching other devotees, like
Your
sometimes you
servants.
see devotees, they embrace, and so it's also close proximity, physical touching. Of course, it should be done appropriately.
Yeah.
But I find it very inspirational that he adds that, and I use my sense of touch, touching the Vaishnavas, touching the feet or the hands, and just
Yeah.
have a friendship, embrace with peers.
Yeah. It's very powerful. It's stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, this embrace and touch. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.